When a self-driving car gets into an accident or a hiring AI shows bias, who's actually to blame? It is, without a doubt, one of the toughest questions in tech today. And to answer it, we don't just need a rule book, we need a map.
You know, this is so incredibly tricky because AI systems are what the experts call socio-technical. Now, I know that's a fancy term, but all it really means is that these things aren't just lines of code. Think of them more like these complex, tangled webs of technology, the people who build and use them, the companies they exist in, and of course the society they impact. So when something goes wrong in that web, trying to point your finger at just one single cause, it's next to impossible.
Right, you can't assign responsibility in a system you can't clearly see. And that's exactly where the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, comes in. They've put together this really comprehensive framework. It's more like a detailed atlas, really, to help everyone navigate all these risks and assign clear responsibilities. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to dig a little deeper into this whole accountability problem. Then, we'll use that NIST framework as our guide to build our map from the inside out. We'll get to know the key players and what their jobs are, and then we'll get to the one rule, the critical rule that makes this whole system of responsibility actually work.
So, let's start building this map. And I want you to think of this framework not as some simple checklist, but really as that detailed atlas for responsible AI we just talked about. We're going to explore it layer by layer, showing how every single part of an AI's life connects, and more importantly, who is on the hook for what at each and every stage. Now, here's what's so revolutionary about this map. It doesn't start with the tech. It doesn't start with algorithms or data. It starts with us. It begins with this absolute, unwavering focus on the people and the planet that these AI systems are ultimately going to affect. And listen, this is not just some feel-good, vague idea. In this NIST framework, putting people and planet right at the absolute center, well, it has a very specific, very powerful meaning that sets the priority for every single decision that comes after. So what does this actually mean in practice? It means that every technical decision, every business decision, has to be measured against its impact on human rights and the well-being of our society and our environment. That's the ultimate yardstick. It's the North Star for everything else. Okay, so with that essential foundation locked in place, our map can now start building outwards. We can start charting the technical and the operational journey of an AI system. So let's take a look at these different layers. So as you can see, the AI lifecycle is basically made up of these 4 concentric circles, and they all surround our core of people and planet. It all starts with the outer layer, the why. That's the application context. Then, as we move inward, you've got the data the system uses, then the AI model itself, and finally the task and output, what it actually does. Each of these layers has its own set of risks, and, you guessed it, requires its own set of actors with really clear responsibilities. All right, so who are the people actually working inside these layers? Well, the framework defines a whole cast of AI actors, and each one has a super important role to play in this whole system of shared responsibility. So, let's meet the team. The analogy to a construction project here is just perfect. You've got your architects, those are the designers, they create the blueprint. Then you have the developers, that's your construction crew, the ones doing the actual building. The deployers are like the project managers, getting the whole system integrated into the real world. And the operators, they're the team running it day to day. But, and this is a big but, pay very close attention to that last role, the evaluators. Think of them as the independent building inspectors. Their job is absolutely critical for safety and for trust. And that brings us to what is, I would argue, the single most important operational rule in this entire framework. It's a non-negotiable principle, and it's designed to build a powerful check and balance right into the process itself. It ensures accountability, and it prevents systemic failure. It's called the separation of duties. So what does this actually mean? Well, it means you have to establish an organizational firewall. The teams that build and use the AI models, the developers, the data scientists whose whole goal is to make it work, they have to be kept separate from the teams that test and validate them. The goal of that second group, the evaluators and the auditors, it's totally different. Their job is to prove that the system is trustworthy and safe. And let's be really clear here, this is not just a friendly suggestion. NIST explicitly calls the separation of duties a best practice for responsible AI governance. This is a clear, actionable directive for any organization that's serious about accountability, period. So why is this separation so incredibly important? Well, for one, it prevents the builders from, grading their own homework. It brings in a fresh, objective perspective that can catch problems the development team might miss, maybe because of groupthink or just being way too close to the project. Ultimately, this is what ensures real, true accountability. So what's the bottom line in all of this? This framework is a real game changer. It totally shifts the conversation away from this reactive culture of blame, of pointing fingers, and toward a proactive culture of shared responsibility. It's all about designing systems to build better, safer AI right from the very start. This framework from NIST gives us the map, it gives us the defined roles, and it gives us the critical roles of the road. But the real challenge, the big question is this: how do we actually embed its core values, that central focus on people and planet, into the very heart, the DNA of our organizations? How do we make that the driving force behind every single decision? Well, that is the next great frontier for responsible AI.